primary education under the 1970 education policy was looked at in a slightly different manner than previously. Number one, it was seen to be a basic principle in the government policy. Primary education was heavily stressed in the 1970 policy in more than one way. Some of the ways were: it was recommended to make primary education universal and compulsory by 1980. So that really gave a decade. In 10 years, the policy aimed to achieve universal primary education for all children in Pakistan of school-going age. It was also recommended to raise primary education from being from class 1 to 5 to being from class 1 to 8. So 3 more years were to be added to primary education. Whatever the philosophy of the people that promulgated this is not of concern. The concern is that instead of 5 years of compulsory education, our young children would be getting 8 years of compulsory education, even though we would still be calling it primary education. So the years of schooling for children was increased by 3 years if it was in actuality to become compulsory and mandatory. Education for girls was also encouraged. Primary education was open to boys and to girls. Both genders were supposed to be in schools. If you were a child, male or female, of that particular age, you needed to be in schools. So heavy emphasis on primary education, heavy emphasis on setting a solid foundation for schooling and betterment of our children. Secondary education was seen to be scientific, technical, and professional education. All three were stressed. The policymakers realized at the time that all children will not follow one path, so they gave 3 different paths to secondary education. A target of education of 430,000 students was fixed in the plan of 1970. This target, this is not really a large number when you consider this is across the country. Would it be possible to educate 430,000 students in scientific education, technical education, and professional education? Across the country, I think it should have been possible. I think it was a realistic target over time, but whether it was achieved or not, we will see as we go on and investigate the 1970 policy. Higher education, which is university education, the curriculum has been stressed to be reorganized to improve higher education. So what the policymakers saw was there was higher education in the country, but it needed to be improved. It needed to be brought in line with international standards and the change in technology. This is the 70s, and the 70s saw the beginnings of technological innovations. And these policymakers had the vision to see that coming and make appropriate recommendations for higher education. New colleges be opened for science education. Again, we see science education is stressed in the 1970 policy. It was seen to provide economic boost in the country. It was seen to provide better lives for our people, and so science education was stressed. Centers for excellence be opened in universities where research work would be carried out, and a University Grants Commission be established to coordinate the work according to standards and quality measures across universities in the country. Now, this is important to note that the University Grants Commission was a body that was to look after the interests of the universities. Research was stressed. These policymakers saw the need for research and generating our own knowledge base. Adult education was also stressed in the 1970 policy. They realized that we are focusing on children, but there are lots of adults in the country without an education. They need to be educated too if our literacy rate is to go up. People with vision would recommend something like that. So focus on primary, secondary, higher, and adult education.